Let's go to another video, but first subscribe and leave a like to strengthen the channel. Now, let's go.
The blood was still fresh on the sand when Carolina entered the corral. 3 men had already been taken to the hospital that morning. One with his arm broken in 2 places, another with 3 cracked ribs, and the third couldn't even walk properly anymore. The black horse that was there, snorting and striking its hooves against the fence, had already hurt too many people. And now this skinny girl, only 22 years old, thought she could do what no one else had managed to do. The crowd burst into laughter. "Go back home, girl," someone shouted from the improvised bleachers. "This isn't a game. Let the men handle it," another yelled, and more laughter echoed through the place. Carolina felt her face burn, not from embarrassment, but from anger. Anger at being treated like she was worth nothing. Anger at seeing her father at home, coughing blood in bed because they didn't have money for the medicine. Anger at waking up every day without knowing if there would be food on the table. The 50,000 reis from that challenge were her family's only chance to survive. Enrique Tavares, the owner of the richest farm in the region, was sitting in the front row with an arrogant smile on his face. He had bought that horse for a fortune just to show he had power, but the animal refused to be ridden. No one could even get close. So Enrique opened the challenge to the entire town, thinking he would have fun watching others fail. And he really was having fun. "Next victim," he shouted, raising a glass of wine as if he were in a Roman circus. "Someone tell her mother she'll need to pick up the body." More laughter. Carolina clenched her fists. She couldn't give up. Her father's medicine cost 3,000 reis a month. The electricity bill was overdue. The bank was going to take their small property if they didn't pay the debt in 60 days. That money was everything. But when she looked at the horse, something strange happened. The animal stopped thrashing. It stood still, looking at her, not with anger, but with something Carolina recognized instantly. It was the same look she saw in the mirror every day. Tiredness, pain, desperation. That horse wasn't mean. It was afraid. "You can start whenever you want," Enrique shouted, impatient. "Or are you going to stand there like a statue?" Carolina took a deep breath and took the first step. The crowd fell silent. Everyone expected her to run, to try to rope the animal, to do something violent. But she just walked slowly with her hands open. The horse stepped back, nervous. "Easy," Carolina whispered softly. "I know you're scared. I am too." She stopped 3 meters away and crouched down. She didn't try to get any closer. She just stayed there, breathing, waiting. The crowd started to grow restless. "This is ridiculous," someone shouted. "She's not going to do anything. What a waste of time. Give up, girl." But Carolina didn't give up. She had learned something from the old mare she cared for at home, the only thing of value the family still had. Horses weren't machines. They were living beings, with feelings, with memories, with traumas. And the horse in front of her had been hurt. She could see it in his eyes. After 5 minutes, she slowly put her hand in her pocket and took out a piece of Rapadura she had brought. She placed it on the ground in front of her and stepped back. The horse looked at it, suspicious, sniffed the air, took 1 step, then another, and ate the Rapadura. The crowd fell into absolute silence. Carolina waited another minute and placed another piece, this time closer. The horse came without hesitation. When he finished, she held out her empty hand, palm up. The animal sniffed, snorted, and touched his muzzle to her palm. "Impossible," someone murmured in the bleachers. Enrique Tavares was standing now, the glass forgotten in his hand, watching everything with his mouth open. Carolina ran her hand along the horse's neck, slowly, feeling his heart beating fast under the dark coat. "You're not bad," she whispered. "You're just hurt, just like me." And at that moment, she knew she would succeed. Not because she was strong, not because she was experienced, but because she understood what it was like to be treated as if you were worth nothing. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Leave in the comments what you think so far and which city or country you're watching from. Your participation is very important to us. The horse lowered his head and leaned into her hand again, confident now. And Carolina smiled for the first time in weeks, knowing that the real fight was only just beginning. Enrique Tavares had not always been a bad man. He had grown up poor, the son of rural workers who could barely put food on the table. He spent his entire childhood hearing that he was nothing, that he would never be anything, that people like him were destined to die in poverty, and that burned inside him like a live ember. When he finally managed to save enough money and buy his first property, Enrique swore to himself that he would never be humiliated again. Never again would he be treated as inferior. And little by little, that determination turned into obsession. He needed to prove to everyone that he had power, that he was important, that he was respected. The horse was part of that. Enrique had spent a fortune buying that purebred Lusitano stallion. The seller warned that the animal was difficult, that it had a history of trauma, that it needed patience. But Enrique didn't want patience. He wanted dominance. He wanted to show that he could control even the wildest creature. But the horse refused to be controlled. In the first few days, Enrique tried to ride it. He was thrown off 3 times. On the third, he broke 2 ribs and spent a week barely able to breathe. The doctor told him to be careful, maybe sell the animal. But Enrique didn't sell. Selling would mean admitting defeat. So he hired professional trainers. The first was a big man, with years of experience, huge muscles. He entered the corral confident, talking loudly, saying he had already broken hundreds of wild horses. 5 minutes later, he was on the ground with a dislocated shoulder, screaming in pain. The second tried more aggressive techniques. Whip, spurs, shouting. The horse became even more violent. It almost killed the man. The third, the fourth, the fifth, all failed. And each failure made Enrique angrier, more obsessed. He spent fortunes bringing in specialists from other towns. Nothing worked. The horse remained untamable, and the gossip spread through the region. Did you hear? Enrique can't even ride his own horse. They say he's already spent more than 100,000 reis on trainers and nothing. How embarrassing. All that money, and it's good for nothing. The laughter echoed in bars, in markets, in conversation circles. And Enrique felt each one like a stab wound. He was becoming a joke. Exactly what he had sworn he would never be again. That was when he had the idea for the public challenge. If he couldn't tame the horse, he would turn it into a spectacle. He would offer 50,000 reis. And when no one succeeded, everyone would see that the problem was the horse. It was impossible. He would be free from humiliation. The news spread fast. 50,000 reis would change a life. People from all over the region started signing up. Strong men, experienced men, some famous. Enrique set up bleachers, sold tickets, turned everything into an event. On the day of the challenge, more than 300 people showed up. Enrique was sitting in the front row, wearing his best suit, smiling, serving expensive wine to important guests. That was power. That was control. Even if the horse wasn't tamed, he commanded the show. The first competitors entered confidently and were destroyed. One by one, big strong men were thrown to the ground, trampled, humiliated. The crowd shouted, cheered, laughed. Enrique laughed too. The more violent the horse became, the more justified he felt. See? The problem wasn't him. It really was impossible. But then Carolina signed up. Enrique recognized her immediately. She was the daughter of SCU Tomas, that bankrupt farmer who lived on the tiny property by the roadside. The skinny girl he sometimes saw riding past on a bicycle, worn clothes, tired eyes. She could barely support her own family, and she thought she was going to tame a horse that had destroyed the best trainers in the state. It was ridiculous. Let her try. Enrique told the organizers when they suggested refusing her registration. It'll be funny. And it was funny at first. The crowd burst into laughter when they saw Carolina enter the corral. So small, so fragile, so insignificant. The men shouted jokes, made bets on how long she would last before giving up. Enrique leaned back in his chair, smiling, waiting for the show. But then something strange happened. Carolina didn't run toward the horse. She didn't try to rope it. She didn't shout. She just stood there looking. And the horse, that beast that had attacked everyone who came close, also stopped. Enrique's smile began to fade. He saw the girl slowly crouch down. He saw her place something on the ground. He saw the horse approach, eat from her hand, press its muzzle into her palm. And for the first time in months, Enrique felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Fear that that poor, insignificant, despised girl was about to accomplish what he never could. Fear that everything he believed about strength and power was wrong. And he wasn't prepared for that. Carolina woke up before the sun rose. Her hands trembled as she made the coffee. She hadn't slept for the last 3 nights. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the crowd laughing, saw her father coughing up blood, saw the house being taken by the bank. But she also saw the horse, that look of pain. She had spent weeks preparing in secret. Every dawn, before everyone woke up, Carolina went to the small corral at the back of the property where Luna, the family's old mare, stayed. She practiced the movements, the breathing, the patience. She studied every detail of Luna's behavior when she was nervous, when she was calm, when she trusted. But Luna was gentle. Enrique's horse was a storm. "Are you really going to do this?" Her father's voice came from the bedroom, weak and hoarse. Carolina went in and found him sitting on the bed, thinner than ever. His eyes sunken, his skin pale. He could barely stand for more than 10 minutes straight, but he still tried to look strong in front of her. "I am, Dad." "Carolina, that animal has already hurt too many people. I can't lose you too." She sat on the edge of the bed and held his hand. The hand that had once been strong, that had worked the land for 40 years, was now cold and trembling. "And I can't lose you," Carolina whispered, feeling her throat tighten. "That money is our only chance. If I don't try, we lose everything." Her father closed his eyes, and a tear ran down his face. "I should have taken better care of you. I should have been a better father. You're the best father in the world," she said, squeezing his hand. "And I'm going to bring that money home. I promise." But deep down, Carolina was terrified. She had seen the videos going around. 5 professional trainers had tried to ride that horse. Big, strong, experienced men. All of them were thrown to the ground. One spent 3 days in the hospital. Another swore never to go near horses again. What made her think she would be any different? Carolina left the house while the sky was still dark. She grabbed the old bicycle and pedaled to Enrique's farm. She wanted to arrive early, before the crowd, before the circus began. She needed to see the horse one more time. She needed to feel if there was still a chance. When she reached the corral, the sun was just starting to rise. The horse was there, alone, standing in the darkest corner. He lifted his head when he heard her footsteps, and Carolina felt her heart race. "Hi," she whispered, stopping outside the fence. "Remember me?" The horse didn't move. He just looked at her, still, deciding whether she was friend or enemy. Carolina slowly opened her backpack and took out 3 pieces of Rapadura she had brought. She placed one in the palm of her hand and stretched her arm through the wooden boards of the fence. She waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. And then the horse walked toward her. He sniffed the Rapadura, sniffed her hand, and ate slowly, unhurried. Carolina felt tears burn in her eyes. He remembered her. After 2 weeks, with so many people trying to tame him by force, he still remembered the only person who had been kind. "I need you today," she whispered, running her hand over his muzzle through the fence. "I know you're tired. I know you want them to leave you alone, but I really need this money. My father is dying." The horse rested his head against her hand, and Carolina felt something strange. A connection, as if he understood, as if he had also lost something important and knew what it felt like to be desperate. "If you let me get on today, I promise you one thing," she continued, her voice breaking. "I promise I'll never let anyone hurt you again. I promise you'll have a good life, with green pasture, with respect, with care. I promise." It was an impossible promise. She didn't even know if she would get the money. She didn't even know if Enrique would let her stay near the horse after the challenge. But she needed to make that promise. She needed to believe there was a better future waiting for both of them. The sun was higher now. Soon the crowd would start arriving. The shouting, the laughter, the pressure. Carolina rested her forehead against the fence and closed her eyes, trying to capture that moment of peace before the storm. "Us against the world," she whispered. "You and me." The horse snorted softly, almost as if he agreed. And for the first time since she had agreed to take part in the challenge, Carolina felt that maybe, just maybe, she had a real chance to win. But the fear was still there, tight in her chest, reminding her that one mistake could cost her life. The crowd was in absolute silence when Carolina finally stood up. She had been crouched for almost 20 minutes, just breathing near the horse. 20 minutes that felt like hours. No one moved. No one spoke. Everyone holding their breath. Carolina slowly reached out her hand and touched the horse's neck. He didn't step back, didn't snort, didn't attack. He just closed his eyes, as if that touch were the first kind thing in months. "You know what it's like to suffer, don't you?" Carolina whispered, running her hand over the dark, sweaty coat. "You know what it's like when everyone expects you to be something you're not." The horse opened his eyes and looked at her. And in that look, Carolina saw everything. She saw the pain, the fear, the loneliness. She saw an animal that had been treated like a machine, like property, like an object of pride, never like a living being. She knew exactly what that was like. All her life, people had looked at her and seen only a poor girl. No one saw how she studied at night. No one saw how she took care of her father. No one saw that she had dreams, value, that she was more than the circumstances she was born into. "We're going to show them," she whispered, resting her forehead against the horse's neck. "We're going to show them they're wrong." Carolina took another step and placed her hand on the mane. The horse didn't move. She waited, breathing along with him. And then, with a smooth motion, she climbed up. The horse trembled. The crowd held its breath. Carolina sat in the saddle, her legs shaking. She had never ridden such a big horse, but she knew she couldn't show fear. "Easy," she whispered, stroking his neck. "I trust you. Trust me too." The horse took one step, then another. The crowd exploded into murmurs. Someone shouted. Another started clapping, but was quickly silenced. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. Enrique was on his feet, the wine glass forgotten on the ground, his face white as paper. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. That girl was riding the horse that had destroyed men twice her size. It was impossible, but it was happening. Carolina made the horse take the first full lap around the corral. Slow, controlled, calm. There was no violence, no struggle. It was almost beautiful, like a dance. "One more lap," she whispered. "Just one more, and we've got this." The horse snorted softly, as if agreeing, and began the second lap. That was when someone in the crowd started crying loudly. An old woman, sitting in the bleachers, with tears running down her wrinkled face. Then another person, and another. And suddenly, half the crowd was crying. They were seeing the power of kindness defeating brute force. They were seeing that there was another way to do things. That strength wasn't about domination. It was about deep understanding. That respect wasn't earned with violence, but with true empathy. Carolina completed the second lap and stopped the horse in the center of the corral. She got down slowly, her legs barely able to support her. And when her feet touched the ground, she hugged the animal's neck and started crying too. She had done it. 50,000 reis. Her father's medicine. The house saved. Everything she needed. But more important than that, she had proven something. To herself, to the town, to everyone who had laughed at her. She had proven that she was worth something. The crowd exploded into intense celebration. Shouts, applause, crying. People jumping, hugging each other, as if they had just witnessed a true miracle. And maybe they really had. Enrique was standing there in the middle of it all, motionless, looking at Carolina. And for the first time in his life, he felt shame. Real, deep shame, the kind that burns inside and doesn't go away easily. He had spent fortunes trying to break that horse. He had hired the best professionals. He had used force, violence, money, and nothing had worked. And that girl, with no money, no experience, nothing but patience and heart, had managed in minutes what he hadn't managed in months. Because she had done the one thing he had never thought to do. She had treated the horse as an equal. Enrique looked around and saw the faces of the people. He saw the admiration in their eyes when they looked at Carolina. He saw the respect, and he realized that was what he had always wanted. Not fear, not power, respect. And he would never get that being who he was. He needed a change. For the first time in decades, Enrique Tavares made a decision that had nothing to do with pride or money. He made a decision based on what was right, and he started walking toward Carolina. Carolina completed the second lap riding the horse. The silence exploded into shouts, applause, and crying. People who had laughed at her were now clapping until their hands hurt. Women cried. Men who had mocked her stared at the ground, ashamed. Enrique Tavares stood in the middle of the crowd, pale, open-mouthed, as if he had just seen a miracle happen right in front of him. Carolina got off the horse with trembling legs. She could barely stand. The adrenaline was still rushing, her heart pounding hard. She hugged the animal's neck and whispered softly, "Thank you. You saved my life." The horse rested his head on her shoulder, calm, as if they had always been friends. The crowd invaded the corral. Dozens of people surrounded Carolina, touching her, congratulating her, apologizing. She could barely breathe. That was when a strong voice cut through the chaos. Silence. Enrique entered the corral, pushing his way through. His face was red, sweaty, but there was something different in his eyes. It wasn't anger. It was respect. He stopped in front of Carolina and stayed quiet for long seconds. The crowd waited. Enrique was known for being proud, for never admitting he was wrong. But then he did something no one expected. He knelt. Absolute silence took over the place. Enrique Tavares, the richest and most powerful man in the region, was on his knees in front of a poor 22-year-old girl. "I was wrong," he said, his voice breaking. "I spent months trying to break this horse. I spent fortunes on trainers. I treated him like an object, property, something I could control. And you treated him like a living being." Carolina didn't know what to say. Tears streamed down her face. "I underestimated you." Enrique continued. "I laughed at you. I let everyone laugh at you. And I'll never be able to erase that. But I can try to make it right." He stood up, took an envelope from his pocket, and placed it in Carolina's hand. 50,000 reis, as promised. But that's not all. Enrique looked at the horse, then back at her. "This horse is yours now. I don't deserve to have him. And there's more. I want to hire you. You'll be responsible for all the horses on my farm. A decent salary, a house for you and your father, full health insurance. I'll pay for every treatment your father needs." Carolina felt her legs weaken. It couldn't be true. It was too good. "Why?" she managed to ask, her voice coming out weak. "Because you taught me something today," Enrique said, and for the first time she saw tears in his eyes. "You taught me that strength isn't about control. It's about understanding. And I spent my life trying to control everything. My workers, my animals, my family. And I lost everything that mattered." He looked at the crowd. "All of you saw what happened here today. A girl everyone despised achieved what strong and experienced men couldn't. Not because she's stronger, but because she's wiser. Because she has something most of us have lost. Empathy." The crowd was in absolute silence. Some people were openly crying. "I'm going to change," Enrique said, looking back at Carolina. I promise I'm going to be a better man. And it starts here, now, by asking your forgiveness in front of everyone. Carolina couldn't hold it in anymore. She broke down crying, sobbing, clutching the envelope to her chest. All the way to the last few weeks, all the fear, all the pressure, everything collapsed at once. "Thank you," she managed to say between sobs. "Thank you." Enrique smiled, a genuine smile, different from that old arrogance. He held out his hand. Carolina shook it, and at that moment, something changed in that town. 3 months later, Carolina was in the green pasture of the large farm, watching 7 horses grazing peacefully. The animal that had once been treated like a beast now had a name, Tempestade, and he was the gentlest of them all. Her father stood beside her, still thin, but healthy, smiling. The treatment was working. He was going to live. "You did the impossible, daughter," he said, putting his arm around her shoulders. "No, Dad," Carolina replied, looking at Tempestade. "I just did what should have been obvious. I treated him with respect." And as the sun slowly set on the golden horizon, Carolina understood the true lesson of that day. Kindness is not weakness. Empathy is not fragility. And the strongest people are not the ones who dominate others, but the ones who understand that every living being deserves dignity. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Tell us in the comments what you thought and which city or country you're watching from. Your participation means a lot to us and helps bring stories like this to more people. Sometimes, all someone needs to shine is for others to believe in